Beautiful, thank you, Brooke. All right, as Brooke said, we're going to try to do this webinar a little bit differently today. Typically, most webinars are a bunch of slides and questions at the end. Since we all missed going to Collaborate this year, and we missed all of the interactivity of being able to go to the presentations and ask questions and bend people's ears on things, I wanted to try to bring a little bit of that into our webinar today. So I do have slides. I'm going to try to go through the presentation fairly quickly and then move on to a live demo of what we cover in the slides. If you have questions while we're going through the slides or while we're doing the demo, please feel free to ask them. I have Kyle Gray on, who is going to be monitoring those questions, and he will interrupt me as necessary to ask the questions, and we will try to address anything that you have. So whether it is how a particular thing works or anything related to what we're covering, please feel free to ask your questions. We want you to come away from this having an appreciation for some of the Easter eggs or lesser known features that ALLOut has and in most cases has had for quite a while in their system. All right, we're going to start off with looking at some of the user and role tips and tricks. So first one of the fun things that I found is if I need to create a new role and make it a copy of an existing role, rather than going through all the work of going through the P0092 and setting up a new role, then going in and setting up the role relationships, adding the environments, doing the find cut, putting the security in, all of that. You can do that in one click with ALLOut. So you can copy from a role, you can copy to a existing role, or you can copy and actually create the role that you want to do at the same time. And as you can see on the screenshot here, all of these aspects can be done in a single click. So your role relationships, security, environments, and your find cut. So a complete duplication of one role to another. If you want to copy your security types from one role to another, now JDE does have the ability to copy all of your security from role A to role B, but it gives you everything all at once. You get a lot more granular control when you're doing this through ALLOut. This is one example of some of the configuration that you can do in here. Another one is copy by QBE. So if you load up the security supergrid and you have just 2 or 3 items, not all of the application security, but just a couple of things, and you want to copy it from one role to another, you put in the destination role. You can even change your QBE values. You use the copy with QBE and it creates it based on the QBE values that you've put into the grid. Another thing that we advocate use of is find cut for your roles. I call it the original user UX1 user interface because it streamlines what your users see on the screen and makes it much easier for them to navigate, reduces their need to create favorites. However, as end users, we all know they're going to continue to create their favorites, but this makes it much less likely that they're going to want to go and create it because they can find everything much easier. So if you have a lot of roles and you want to create find cut for them very quickly and easily, so for example, if you're doing business unit roles and you don't want the business unit roles to grant access to parts of the menu, you can apply find cut to a large number of roles for an entire task view in a matter of a couple of minutes. Another one, if you need to update users' profiles, let's say you need to add a country code, language, you want to add a job queue, a change frequency, any of these items within the user and role maintenance within ALLOut, you can very quickly and easily add all of that information en masse to users. All right, next section. This is less for the security and maintenance users and management. This is more for your business users. I stumbled across this a number of years ago. I've shown it to a few business analysts, and generally speaking, every single one of them has really loved what you can do here. So one thing that you typically do in a project is create custom versions of all of the base JDE versions within the system. Normally you do that one at a time. One of the issues with that is that when you create the new one is you have to either have that version name copied out somewhere and paste it in, and you can do it one at a time. ALLOut has a wonderful facility for doing this for batch versions and interactive versions where you can very easily load up the object and then put in the new version title. It's going to copy the version name over. You can then tweak it to be whatever you want it to be. You can set your security user, set your security flags, all of those things all in one step. And then when you click the create, it's going to create all of those new versions. Instead of having to go through one at a time, it does multiple all at once. Another thing that this is very useful for is, let's say you want to update the security flag. So the security flag is not your traditional security, but it is a flag that is attached to the UBE versions that say what level of access other users have with this particular UBE. Typically, they're set to a security flag of 1, and the security user is set to JDE. So again, within here, you can change that flag, or you can just simply change who the security user is to a non-JDE user so that you can go in and make changes to those UBEs if you need to. Another thing that we get asked a lot is, how do I know whether a UBE has been marked as read-only or update capable within the system? Well, again, within ALLOut, you can come in here and you can put in your UBE, or you can put in by product code and then display whether it is not just read-only, but you can see if it's marked as a web-only, if it's marked as a read-only. And again, unfortunately for JDE, the vast majority of the UBEs in the system are not specified, but for your system, it's very easy then to go in. For example, I believe the R42800 was not identified as an update capable. You can come in here, mark it as update capable, and save it so that going forward, you can identify which ones you know are update capable and which ones you know are not update capable. So you know which ones are safe to hand out. All right, next section I want to go over are some of the menu tips or task view tips that you can do. So if you need to, for example, update all of your tasks to use a new version. So for example, if you've built a task view, you've copied it, and because during the project you didn't know what versions you were going to be using, you put the base version in there, and now you want to go through and update all of them. Within the menu maintenance program and all that, you can filter by object, brings it all up, and then you can replace the versions. So these are all set to ZJDE. You can put in your custom versions here. You can also update option codes as well. And you can also update your description here so that it's not all exactly the same description. Another thing that we find very useful, especially for multinational companies, is being able to add your language options. So we're working with a client in Europe right now that has operations in multiple countries in Europe, as well as South America and Asia Pacific. So when new items are added to the menu, we need to add translations for Spanish, Portuguese, French, Chinese simplified, Polish, etc. So we can put that in here very, very easily. All right, let's say you want to start with a clean task view. You want to take something that's already there and you want to create a whole new task view. Again, there's a nice feature within ALLOut that I can take an existing task view, copy it to a new task view. Now the caveat is you have to go into your P9000 and create your task view header first. But once you've done that, you can copy everything from task view A to task view B in a single click. So again, it copies everything from an old task view to a new task view, so then you can go and modify and make changes there without affecting your end users. All right, next is our three-way match. So this, if you've ever worked with me, you know that this is one of my favorite programs to go into for ALLOut, and it can be used for practically 100 different things within your JDE system. One of the first ones is being able to see what a user can see on their task view, but without having to copy their user with all of their roles or go stand over their shoulder and look and see what they can see. So within the three-way match, if you put in the user profile up here, and then you click on show roles for user, it's going to load all of their roles into the grid. Once you build it, then it shows exactly what they can see. The key being anything that has the pound sign or X's and highlighted in yellow is not visible for that particular role. So we know, for example, that Donald Duck can see the O3 Customer Master, and here's the part of the menu related to that particular role. Extending that is, let's say you need to see what the exit programs are for that particular object. So from Customer Master, here's all the things that you can get access to from the form and row exits, and you can continue to drill down by highlighting and choosing to display the exits for each one of those. We can also load the 950 security. It gives you a shorthand flag here. A D means it has full access. So if you look in here and you see that, for example, let's say they have access to revised phone numbers here and you don't want them to, you can change that flag from a D to an I and make it inquiry. Once you hit update, then that particular role will only have inquiry access to the revised who's who. This is a wonderful tool for troubleshooting any particular user when they're stuck. Instead of having to go through and ask them which form and row exit they're choosing, you can effectively follow along by loading their profile, loading the exits, seeing the security, and seeing at which point the security fails. The other fun part that we get asked a lot is, okay, well, what roles have access to a particular part of the menu? So again, you can come in here, you load the task ID for it, and then again, using the form exit, you say, load roles for menu. Then it will come in and say, all right, well, here are all the roles that have visibility to this part of your menu structure. If you see a role that shouldn't have access to that particular folder, when you've done that, it's very easy to then go and fine cut it out. So my example, I had a Customer Master folder. I had a couple of other roles that showed they had access to it. Well, if I don't want them to, I can easily, in here in the ThreeWay Match again, limit the view of that folder for that particular role. All right, so that's my slides. I've tried to go through fairly quickly. I think we managed that in about 15 minutes. And so I am going to minimize that and bring up my FAT client and my web client here. All right. So once we're in here, this is the ALLOut main screen. So let's go through and take a look at some of the user maintenance tips and tricks, and we can go through and make some updates and changes here. So again, we looked at being able to maintain users. So if you want to be able to make any of these changes here, you have a lot of options here. Obviously, I didn't show everything in the screen. I can look at their formats. I can show my audit field, so I can show who made the change, what program they used, date, time, and workstation as well. If I find things that I don't like here, I can very, very easily make changes to those here as well. I can even get into my address book detail. So if I need to change a business unit for a particular user, I can't QBE on that particular field, but if as I'm scrolling down through here, I can very easily make changes to that information. If we wanted to change our job queue, we can come in here. We see our your typical queue batch. So if I wanted to add queue batch to a bunch of people, again, you can see that this can be done very quickly and easily. You go to your form, update database, you get the warning that says you're about to make the update. If you look, you've now updated everybody to set their default job queue to queue batch. If you find one that you didn't want to do, and I know I've got some demo users in here, you can again easily delete them, hit your update, and everything's done. Same thing if you need to change your date format, date separator, any of those types of things are very, very easy to identify and update all in one place. If you have noticed, for example, take out the country code. Let's say you figured out that not everybody is set up to a approved password change frequency. So a 0 means you never have to change your password. Well, that's not necessarily a great idea. So if you want to go through and update everybody, again, very, very simple, easy way to do it so that you can identify and correct issues all in one screen. The other nice thing that you can do from here that we didn't talk about on the screen is if you wanted to set up a new user, this allows you to set up a user all on one screen. It gives you your user profile. You can create your 98 OWSEC record. You can even create your address book detail record here, and it will create an FO101 record as a type E using the next numbers that you've already predefined through the address book. All right, we'll cancel that. And again, a similar type of thing here is I can copy and create a user. We talked about the roles, but you can also do this by user. So if I wanted to do a test user, so if I wanted to create a user for Brooke, I can make it a copy of me. Now, one thing here is that this does look at your password complexity rules. So it's going to give it a default password trying to use the user profile. I don't remember what I set my password requirements to, but once you've gotten that, set the user password, I can copy role relationships, I can copy environments, I can even copy favorites. User display preferences, everything from one user to another. So if you need to duplicate an AP entry user for a temp that's coming into backfill, very, very simple and easy way to get that done. Again, copy the roles. So if I wanted to do test master, click confirm copy, and it's really that simple. And there's my new role. Takes the next sequence number, it copies everything exactly the way it should. All right, we had talked about copying security. So if we want to maintain, if we go into the maintain security in your super grid, if I pull up a particular role, I can then identify everything that I have here. I could copy this to, let's see, what role do I want to copy? I can copy, we'll pick, so if I highlight my items here, I can then come over here and say, copy with QBE, it creates the records. It doesn't actually write them until you come in here and say, update database. Once I update database, now I can come in here, if I do a find, I'll see that I have those records. And again, one of the nice things with the security supergrid is the ability to look at the audit information and know who created it, date, time, machine, and method of creation. So another very handy and useful thing there. You can do your mass copies here. Where I had shown the screenshot is if you come in here and let's do a find here. I can now come up here to my row form and do my copy options here. So I can copy by user, I can copy by program. I can select the types that I want to copy. So if I only want to copy my processing option or my row security or both of those, I can select what I want to copy from role to role. Very simple and straightforward. All right, looks like we had a question here. Can security be promoted up DVPYPD? There is some change control within ALLOut. So you do have the ability to do some security promotion. How it's promoted is a little bit different. Now again, obviously if you're doing a promotion, you're gonna have to have multiple tables set up. And there's some extra work that you need to do around that, especially around your JAS instances, OCM mappings and things that need to go with the 950 table from your mappings. But if you come in and look at your project tools, again, you can come in here and configure our change control pieces. So you can go through and select your promotion. So when you do the security promotion from a DV to or a non-prod to a prod, you're basically effectively promoting to super role or promoting to the user itself. But again, this is an automated process. So if you're doing all of your work setup, testing, validation in a non-production environment, and then you promote everything, the system's managing that promotion, and you're setting approval rules and conditions around how that is allowed to be promoted from one environment to another. So you can enforce, make sure that people are having to sign off and accept the changes that are made in the non-production environment. You can enforce if you have segregation of duties, you can make sure that there are no SOD violations. You set the flag so that if there are SOD violations, the promotion to the production environment is disabled.
Okay, Brian, we do have one more question as well. Can we upload contents from Excel to the AO grid?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're looking at pretty much any of the grids, so if I am maintaining users, this is another one, definitely. So if you're bringing on a new division and you have 100 new users that you need to get set up in JD Edwards, and you have an Excel spreadsheet, usually what I like to do is say, whoever's providing that information is, I'll do an extract and say, okay, I need it set up like this. I need a user profile. So we're going to do, first initial, last name. If you have an address number, or if I need to create the address number, we'll get that information. And then you just copy and paste into the grid here, and it creates everything for you all at once. So the nice thing is that it creates your user. You can create the address book, the OWSEC settings, everything all in one place. So especially if you're doing, a new division, a new location where you have, even if it's only 20 users, you're talking 5 minutes of work versus a couple of hours worth of work here. So you can do your uploads here. You can do your uploads in your maintain roles. So if you have a list of roles that you want to load up, again, as long as it's in the right format, you just need the role name and the role description, and then you just copy and paste into the grid here, and it creates everything that you need for it. Same thing for the security management. So again, I can load everything there, and also for your task views. So one thing that's typically used for all of that is if you're doing a project and you're using the start out product from ALLOut, and you create all of your menu, task views, roles, fine cut, everything can be done via Excel. It exports, and then you just simply load it here. So typically, we've seen that creating a task view, creating the roles, creating security, everything can be done in a day or less, depending on how large it is. All right, so looks like we've got a couple other questions here.
We do. I'm trying to track some of them down. The panel's a little bit difficult, but one of them here, and I'm not sure if you got this one, with the mass version copy creation, does it also check the new versions in so they will persist after a full package build deployment?
It does not. What it does is it's going to add them to your default project. So if we go look, I created some earlier this week. I actually didn't go look in my default project. So once you go into your OMW, so obviously I've made some other menu changes here. So here's the versions that I created. So you can then check those in. I'm sorry, I did that via the web. So it adds them to the default project. So you still need to go through your normal change control methods for all of these types of things. So what it does is it creates the version, creates all the information you need around the version, but you still have to then manage it and maintain it through your standard software development cycle for that. Looks like we have a question on what version. So I'm assuming you're talking, I'm not sure if you're talking, Ken, about the ALLOut version or the JDE version. The ALLOut version, I am on version 3.3.1. So I believe there are some newer versions out there. There is a 3.3.2 if you happen to have access to that one. I know there's some additional feature functionality within that as well. Okay, perfect. All right, so one of the things, looks like we're going behind here. So the version creation, so again, if we come in here, is within the project tools. And you go into your maintain your E1 versions. So this is where you're going to create those. And again, this is, and I believe it is by design, is intended to be done via the web. So this is where all of your version copy, I believe the interactive versions can be done via the FAT client, but the batch versions are done via the web. And again, you can make all of your changes here as you see fit to update your versions. All right, so that is the versions. I know we're kind of bouncing all over, going around here. One of the things I wanted to show you here is also actually we'll do it via the FAT client, is the workbench where you can do the fine cut. So if you come in here to the system workbench, again, this is another very, very useful tool. There's a lot more you can do with it than I showed you in the screenshots. But if I want to look for just my roles, for example, I can put in a QBE there. I can find everything that I have defined as a role. But I can also say, you know what roles have I created where I didn't get around to adding my security? So it's nice that you can put a positive and a negative QBE value here. So I can look and say, all right, these are all the roles that I've loaded in my system. These are the ones that I don't have security for. And you can continue on to look and say, well, which ones do I not have assigned to a user? Or you could say, you know what, I have a role with no security, but I've assigned it to someone. Okay, well, that's not necessarily a very useful role at the moment, is it? So it allows you to look at a lot of that information. If you want to find all of your roles that you have created that don't have fine cut. So again, once you highlight these, you select your rows. Don't want to do all of them because I know my other lab users will find their way to my house very quickly if I lock them out of everything on the task view. Once you've highlighted them, you go into your manage select. Oops, sorry, I forgot. I need to default the task view that I want to fine cut. So I'm going to use my test task view. Then I go into my manage selected, hit my fine cut, lock down fine cut for view and input, and we'll just show you here real quick. So I have cancel here real quick so we can look and say, okay, 98 CNC PD. So we'll look at this view. So we can see, for example, that role can see everything on that task view, at least temporarily. So now if I come in here, a couple of clicks, you're updated, and it's locked down. Now, if you need to apply fine cut and you need to fine cut, let's say, multiple task views and you have 30, 40, 50 roles that you want to do that for, there is absolutely no faster way to go about getting that done than using the system workbench. So again, a lot of other things that you can do here. When you look at the manage selected, again, you can add environments to input. So if you have a whole bunch of new roles that you've been testing in non-prod and you need to add the production environment to them, rather than going through the traditional JDE way, you can come in here, you put in the PD 920, JPD 920 in the input, select the roles, and say add environment from input. It makes management and mass changes in that regard extremely easy to make. You can also add a relationship from input. So again, another way that you can mass add a single role to a lot of users. Okay, we had a question or a comment, I think, from Gene. So that in order to create the address book record, you have to have the ability. Yes. So you're doing an insert into address book. So yeah, you do need to have the ability to do that. The one caveat with that is a lot of companies are going more towards master data management teams. So typically address book records are owned by a separate business focused team, and they like to own the creation of those records. Typically, they're always done in production, and then they provide the address book number to the technical team as part of the user profile creation. All right. I think I've covered most of what I had in the slides except for my favorite program, which is the ThreeWay Match. So again, as I said, this is an extremely useful tool to help in troubleshooting. As we had shown before, if I put in a user profile here and then say load roles for user, it comes back and shows it. So as you can see, when I created the customer master and I duplicated it and I said include role relationships, you can see it shows up here as well. So everything that the user can see, I now can see on the screen. I can now build, which is effectively loading for the task view. I put the wrong task view in up there, though I'll have to change that to 777. But it will load that in and show you via the pound sign X's and the yellow and clear to show here's what this user can see on the menu. So if they're saying, hey, I'm trying to go to a particular point on the menu, you can load their roles, take a look and say, okay, well, you don't have access to that. Then you need to find, okay, well, what role does give you access to that? You can go identify the role, go into your role relationships, assign that role to the user, and it's a much simpler, faster way to do troubleshooting. And that's going to load there for a little bit, so I'm going to open up another one. Another feature here, and I don't think this is necessarily a hidden feature here, but you have the ability to assign roles within the grid. And again, if you're doing copy and paste, so again, I can very easily come in here and see all of my users, what roles I have access to, effective date, I can mass expire them. The other nice feature here with ALLOut is my authorized by, and you have a lot of options around that. So you can know who actually assigned the role, and you can put audit notes in here. So I can put a note where I use my ServiceNow ticket number as a reference in there. I can even add an attachment so that I can put a copy of the approval email attached to the role assignment for the user. Another thing, this is probably a lesser used, but if you have the critical role feature here. If I go mark a role as critical, what that means is that if I assign that role to a user, it forces me to provide additional documentation for that role assignment. So for example, a sysadmin role is something that isn't or shouldn't typically be mass assigned like we have in our lab environment. But if I mark it as critical, it requires me to then provide additional documentation that is attached to that role assignment so that an internal audit team coming behind me can look at that and trace that back to why is this particular role been assigned to this user. And can you alter the audit notes? Yes, you can. So it depends. There are some restrictions and there's processing options for the program that can limit when and how the audit notes can be modified. So for example, now I can go through and modify that. I can set the processing options that say for an active role assignment, I want to lock down the audit note so that somebody can't come behind and change. Or you can say once the role has been expired, I want to lock down the audit note. So there's different options for what is done as far as the audit notes. The same thing for the authorized by. You can force that user to be filled in so that you have to attach a valid JDE user profile to say who assigned the role to the user. You can default whoever's logged in and not allow them to change it, which is typically what we recommend, because then you know, hey, Brian on the help desk logged in, he added this role to this user, and here's when he did it. You can also set the options and give different versions of this program so that once I assign a role to a user, I can't unassign the role. I may be able to expire it, but I can't unassign it. So there's going to be a record there that, hey, Brian assigned Sysadmin to his buddy Kyle for 2 days. And I can't hide that evidence that that was assigned. All right, we've got some other questions here.
One of them for segregation of duty auditing. In your opinion, what is the best report to use?
I guess I would ask what you're trying to do for segregation of duties auditing. If you're just running an SOD, if you're looking for running an SOD report to identify who has SOD issues, but if you're looking at auditing for if the SOD setup is being changed, there's some auditing that you can enable for ALLOut so that as you've set up your lists and rules, you can then turn on auditing so that if somebody modifies the contents of a list or changes whether a rule is active or inactive, it's flagged, it's audited. That information is stored in the security history table. And when you use ALLOut, there's some additional codes that are attached to that. So once you go in, you can see all of the changes that have been made to the various bits and pieces that you've chosen to enable auditing for ALLOut. So if that didn't answer your question, Chris, if you wouldn't mind letting me know, and we can certainly get into that. And then Ken asked if I can change the one below. So again, yeah, I can change those. And again, if you notice here, one of the nice things with ALLOut is it gives you an update that says, hey, little lightning bolt, you made a change on this line. If you're going through and maybe you accidentally hit a space bar and you weren't intending to make a change and you see that little lightning bolt, that means ALLOut thinks you've made a change. So you don't want to hit the OK button, you want to hit the cancel button. The OK button is an update and exit the screen. You can also say, I can use the row exit to update just one thing, which I'll go back to. So I can highlight those two, say update database. And now that's updated there. I can also say, oh, that wasn't me that did it, it was Kyle. One thing here is that this does have to be a valid JDE user. So I know I went through, I didn't actually finish creating Brooke. So I try to put her in here. It's going to give me an error message because that user's not valid within the JDE system. So I can't actually choose that user. If you've made a change that, or it's indicating you made a change that you weren't intending to, again, you can just click find, everything reverts back, and no damage has been done there. All right, I'm gonna pop, I think it popped up behind. It's just gonna look and see real quick if we have gotten pretty much everything. The menu management, I didn't go in and show that to you yet. So if we come into the maintain task views, again, you can come in here I'm going to pick a bit smaller, not Enterprise One menus, because we all know how large that one is. And again, you've got information here. So if I want to come in and change my my object, my form, my version, my option code, very easy to do here. I can update my task descriptions, add my alternate language names, all the alternate language names. So right now I have S for Spanish selected. I could come in here and say I want to add Dutch. Then I can add that, hit update, and then switch again. Makes it very easy to make any of those changes. The one of the other things I had shown you, I think, was the copy task view. And again, that's a pretty straightforward thing to do. If you come into the project tools, into menu structuring, you can copy your task view. So you set your source task view and your destination task view. Again, as we said, you do have to have the P9000 record created for it. So if I go there and say I want to copy that to this task view, you can say only copy tasks that have a certain prefix attached to them. And you can also say I want this to be a new prefix. And then you can confirm your copy. And it will churn away in the background for a little bit, and then it will copy everything from task view 29 to my task view 888. And everything will have a prefix beginning with GSI. One thing I mentioned was a lot of the interactive, the processing options. So if you go in and you look at the processing options, so for example, the role relationships, you can come in here, and if you go into processing options, there's a lot of different things that you can configure here, a lot of feature functionality. Get my mouse just in the right spot. So a lot of things that you can say. So for example, this was the audit trail. So you could, if you want, disable the audit trail. And I think, Ken, this was you that had asked about being able to protect those notes. So if I set it to an option 2, that means that once I've made that role assignment and I've added my notes, those notes are protected. So I can't go in and make a change to them. And then the option 1 is I can make changes to the audit notes for active assignments, but once it's been expired, the audit notes are protected. So a lot of useful things within the processing option. So if you've installed and are using ALLOut as it is out of the box, take a look at some of the things that you can do here. Make sure you are aware of what you change so that if you're seeing something you don't particularly like, you can go back and undo some of that information as well. All right, so we are at about 5 minutes remaining. And I think the questions have stopped coming in. So at that point, I know typically at the end we have a few minutes for Q&A, but we've kind of done that as we go through.
We covered it.
So, so one thing that I would ask, I know, is that when the webinar ends, you get a survey. If you all wouldn't mind letting me know whether you prefer a more interactive where we're looking at demos and trying to answer questions and kind of help you out as we go along, or if you prefer more of the static type of presentation where we're just going through and dealing with the slides.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Thank you so much, Brian and Kyle.
Okay. Fantastic. I am going to, then I think if I click stop, it will revert back to you, correct, Brooke?
Got it. I got it right here. Just let me know when
Oh,
you can see
see,
my screen.
you just ripped control right away
Oh,
from me.
sorry. I was getting ready to go.
That's all right.
Stop. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. That was great. I personally enjoyed the interactive experience myself. So thank you guys so much. And thank all of you for your questions. I just want to cover a few follow-up items and then we'll let you go. So our current webcasts are currently listed on the screen. We're adding more all the time. So if you want to sign up for any of those, just go to getgsi.com/JD Edwards webcasts. We also have erptalk.com, which is where it's a problem-solving forum where you can get your enterprise applications questions answered, as well as contribute to other people's questions as well. And make sure you stay connected with us on social media. We're sharing some really awesome content on there, and you can stay up to date with our most current webcasts, as well as industry insights and events that we have going on. And we share a lot more than that on there as well. And we also provide free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our webcasts, our monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, and our online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, as well as on-site and virtual workshops.
Before we go, Brooke, I just thought of one other thing that I would like to request from all of our attendees is if there's any particular topic around security or compliance that you would really like to see us present on, to whether it's a surface level, deep dive, anything like that, please include that in the comments so that we can tailor what we do to what you guys are really looking for.
Yeah, awesome. Good point. Thank you so much. And also, if you want to sign up for a resource center, on the screen right now, you can see is our main menu. Just go to the main menu, click on resources and events, and then go to JD Edwards and click on resources and events on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, not resources and events. The resource center where the orange arrow is pointing. And you'll be able to get access to all of those resources that we have. All right. Well, we just wanted to again, thank you for attending today. And thank you, Brian and Kyle, for your presentation. And we hope that you guys have a great day.
Thank you for joining, everyone.